In this module, this is principles of credit management, lending policies, and best practices. So today we are going to do introduction to credit and types of borrowers and business sectors under this program. We will be doing in other classes, other programs, guidelines for good lending, classification of advances and branding of loan products, credit appraisal, risk management. Credit. What is the meaning of credit? In finance, where we are operating, financial sector, credit is granting of a loan and creation of a debt. Credit means loans and other advances. That is in our financial sector. This term credit is also being used in the commercial trade also. In commercial trade, the credit is used to refer to the approval for delayed payment or purchased goods. You are aware there are so many organizations. They are selling their products on credit, like TVs, washing machines, even motorcycles. Those items in the commercial trade, they are selling on credit. That's also called as credit. But these are two different. One is in the financial sector, which we are doing. That also we call credit. In the commercial trade also, they call it credit. So wherever it is, the credit should be managed appropriately in the above cases. So we call it credit management. But in this program, we are doing with the financial sector credit. If anyone in the commercial trade sector interested in this program, they can follow it and they can get benefits. Credit management. We have seen what is credit. Now we look at what is credit management. Managing provision of credit and its recovery. So it should be carried out effectively and efficiently. The word effectiveness and the efficiency is the management term. You may be aware. Effectiveness means doing the correct thing or the right thing. That is effectiveness. And efficiency is doing things correctly or rightly. So when you combine both effectiveness and efficiency, it means doing the correct thing correctly, doing the right thing rightly. So in the credit management also, we must do the right thing rightly, correct thing correctly. We must make correct credit decisions and implement it correctly. That is the aim. So when you do it, your credit management effectively and efficiently, it should bring benefits to the lender, that is lending bank or any institution, and the borrower. So it will be a win-win situation. That's what we want. Both parties, the banker and the borrower, the customer, both should be benefited by our credit management. Well, so having looked at the meaning of credit and the credit management, now we just look at history of bank lending in Sri Lanka. Just to have some knowledge about what has happened in the past, how the banking developed in Sri Lanka. Though Sri Lanka is reputed to have used coinage in ancient times, there is no recorded history of banking prior to the 17th century. Though our ancient kings, they were using coins, in gold coin, silver coin, the coinage period, it was there. But the history of banking really started during 17th century. What happened? Natukote Chettiars, a migrant business community from South India, introduced a financial service system similar to banking during the Dutch period in Sri Lanka. And it continued during the British period also. So their intrusion helped only the affluent sector of the community who had connection with the foreign entrepreneurs, especially during the British period. So their assistance helped only the affluent sector of the people who had connection with the British rulers and the British entrepreneurs. They have helped them in opening of estates in plantation sector, that is like coffee estates, tea estate, rubber during the British period. So they helped only for those people. They didn't help for any other development activities. During the British period, you may be aware, the business expanded with India, because India also under British's rule, and with the continent, that is Europe. With the expansion of trade with India and European countries under British rule, many banks were set up by the British businessmen in Sri Lanka. In 1841, fully British-owned first commercial bank named Bank of Ceylon, that also named Bank of Ceylon, was established in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, this bank crashed in 1848 with a coffee crisis and had a devastating effect on the country's economy, because this bank extended a lot of facilities for the coffee estate, and the coffee plantation affected by pest attack and destroyed. So because of that one, this bank also collapsed. When a bank is collapsed, that affects the country's economy. Yes, it had a devastating effect on the country's economy. Continuously, many foreign banks were operating during this period, that is Britishers' time, and involved only in foreign trade in the island. They never provided any assistance to the local businessmen or any other development activities. Many banks operated by Britishers. So they extended their facilities for the foreign trade, import and export, not for any development activities. Example, in 1888, there was a bank called Hatton Bank established in the hill countries, and later that amalgamated with some other banks, converted to the present HNB, Hatton National Bank. Similarly, in 1920, a bank branch, Eastern Bank branch, was operated in Sri Lanka. Later, this bank branch also amalgamated with various other bank branches and become as the present commercial bank. These two are very old banks in Sri Lanka. Well, local business community, they are affected because they are unable to compete with the foreign businessmen, because they didn't have any credit facilities from any banks. So local business community canvassed the British government for better banking services to expand their business, as they could not compete with the British businessmen and planters, as they are not getting any credit facilities. But the British government did not want to establish a Ceylonese bank. That time, Sri Lanka was called as Ceylon, Ceylonese bank. However, Mr. George Edmund de Silva, member of State Council for Kandy, moved a motion in the State Council to establish a Ceylonese bank, and it was supported by other members. Those days, similar to our present parliament, under Britishers' time, it was called as State Council. Members from various educated members were elected from various districts of Sri Lanka, and they were in the State Council. Mr. George Edmund de Silva, a prominent, very reputed criminal lawyer from Kandy district, and he practiced in Verelia. So he was a state council member elected from Kandy district, and he moved a motion in the state council to establish a Ceylonese bank. And it was supported by other members, other Sri Lankan members in the state council, like Mr. SWRD Bandaranaike, Mr. G.G. Ponnambalam, all those people supported. And then British government couldn't do anything. Subsequently, the British government appointed a commission to look into this matter and to give their recommendation. So a commission was established. That commission was called as Pochanawala's Commission, because the chairman of the commission was Sorabji Pochanawala, a reputed Indian banker. And they have studied, they met so many bankers, foreign bankers, businessmen, so many people, and finally they gave the recommendation to establish a Ceylonese bank in Sri Lanka by the government. Later, so British government couldn't do anything. Later, an ordinance number 53 of 1939 was passed to establish a local bank fully owned by the government in Sri Lanka. So that was done in 1939 by the ordinance, State Council Ordinance number 53. Thus, the present Bank of Ceylon was established on 1st August 1939 and commenced its banking operation to assist local businessmen and entrepreneurs. So that was. So thereafter, the banking history continued. If anybody interested to learn more about Sri Lankan banking history, there was a book called Expanding Horizon that was published by Bank of Ceylon on their 50th anniversary. So it was translated to Sinhala as well as in Tamil. So the copies may be available in libraries of banks. Definitely it will be available at Bank of Ceylon. If you are interested to learn more, to find more about Sri Lankan banking history, please refer this. You can refer that book, Expanding Horizon. Now, importance of credit to emerging economies. Credit is really important to all economies. Credit is important, but it is very, very important to emerging economies. So when we talk about credit, I want to just say about formal and informal lending. Formal and informal lending. We also can call formal or an informal credit. Formal and informal credit. Formal means institutional credit. Formal means institutional credit. And informal lending or informal credit means non-institutional credit. So institutional credit means credit given by banks, finance companies, all approved institutions, lending institutions. And informal lending or informal credit is by the pawnbrokers, rural lenders, and by even friends, relations. They also give money. They also give credit to their friends and relations. Apart from that, there are money lenders. So all these things we call as informal credit or informal lending. So now, in the informal lending, there are rural traders. Traders also provide credit. How they provide? Yes, in the rural areas for the farm families, they provide provisions. They provision rice, dal, sugar, tea on credit. And they also provide seed material, seed paddy, fertilizer, chemicals that also to them farm families on credit during the cultivation season on credit. But when the harvest comes, the harvest has to come to these traders. They purchase the harvest at the price what they want. And they calculate what they have given for their provisions and for their agricultural cultivation purposes, put the interest also and deduct and give the balance to them. So farm families take them and spend them on festivals and other things. Again, they start to borrow from the trader. So they are eternally in debt to the traders. So these are the form of informal lending. As I told you, the formal lending. Now you understand the difference between formal lending and the informal lending. Okay. Now we come to the importance of credit to emerging economies. You would have heard about poverty and the vicious cycle. Vicious cycle. What is the meaning of vicious cycle? The poverty strike in families. Here is that they have less income. Since they have less income, they are unable to save more. So less saving. When they have less savings, they are unable to invest. Less invest. Either in agriculture or any other work, they are unable to invest. So less invest. Since it is less investment, again less income. So this is vicious cycle. Vishama Chakraya. Nachuchudal. So in this one, families affected by poverty-stricken families, they have less income. Because of the less income, they are less saving. Because of the less saving, less investment, again less income. So they are in this cycle. This is cycle. So how can they come out? They have to increase their investment. How to increase their investment? There should be some outside assistance by way of credit. Outside assistance by way of credit. So if the credit is coming in a proper way, then of course they can increase their investment. If they increase their investment, their income will increase. If their income is increasing, then they can save more, then they can go on. They can come out from the vicious cycle, poverty cycle. So this credit should be, how it should come? I have explained to you, formal and informal. If it is informal, it is problem for the poverty family. So it has to be formal. But now there are ways how the formal can go through the informal. Assist these poverty-stricken families. There are ways that, of course, you may learn later in different module. So to bring the poverty-stricken people out of this vicious cycle, the credit is important. It should be the formal credit is very important. Once credit is given, if the family coming out from the vicious cycle, then more income. When the income is more savings. More savings, more investment. If it is more investment, again more. Then the business cycle converted to development cycle. For this purpose, the credit, formal credit, institutional credit is very important. Institutional credit is very important. This is one of the important things the credit plays. Well, regret for the delay. So now I have explained you on the board about the vicious cycle or the poverty cycle. And to convert that poverty cycle into development cycle, the importance of credit, institutional credit. So for this purpose, the savings and credit for consumption and for the investment purposes should be provided. That's right. The first, of course, Janasavya program was commenced to identify the poverty-stricken families and to provide them assistance for at the credit facilities and encouraging the savings and providing credit for consumption and the investment purposes. And that is continued as Samurti program. So the credit is very, very important for this purpose. Then once it is done, the India country, the families stricken by the poverty will be relieved from that, and they will go towards development, and the whole country will take off through the development process, economic development. So for that purpose, the credit is important. And apart from that, when you do all these things, the employment is created. More employment. So for that one also, the credit is important. Another important thing, SME development. Actually, the SMEs are the backbone of any economies. Even highly developed economies also, SMEs are important, considered as important. Like countries like America, more than 50% of the contribution, the SMEs are contribute to their growth. So SME development is, and to develop the SMEs, the credit is very, very important. If you look at even in our country, all these big companies and corporations, corporates are not suddenly came. Actually, they started their business life as SMEs, and they little by little, they developed to and came as the present companies. For example, Melbourne, Navaloka, a few examples. So they started like SMEs. So to bring those SMEs and to develop them, credit, the formal credit, institutional credit is very, very important. Okay. Now, having looked at these things, the certain things, very basic things, but those are very important things for banking. We are going to look at sources and uses of bank funds. First, we see sources, major sources. One is own capital. Yes, own capital. Now, to start a bank, they must have their own capital. Then the deposits. After starting the bank with their own capital, they will get deposits, various type of deposits. Demand deposit, savings, time deposit, foreign currency deposits, deposits. This is another source for the banks. Then borrowed funds. Banks also will borrow funds. How? Credit lines. They can obtain credit lines from various other international agencies or international banks. They can borrow credit line. Then refinance funds. Refinance funds. What is the meaning of refinance? Now, for certain sectors like agriculture or industry, sometimes banks, commercial banks are reluctant because they have to lend to these sectors, priority sectors. These are priority sectors at reasonable interest rate. And instead of that one, they may think, rather than giving to these priority sectors, if they lend to other commercial sectors, they can earn more. So they are reluctant. Some commercial banks are reluctant. So in those cases, the government has to promote these sectors, agriculture, industry, etc. So government will say, tell these commercial banks, okay, you better grant loans at these terms and conditions. After that, you apply to us, we will provide that amount to you at reasonable interest. And you can pay at an agreed upon time. So first, the commercial banks are lending to these priority sector as instructed by the government. After that, they apply to the government to get the funds what they have lent. So government will provide, that is refinance funds. Earlier, for the agricultural purposes, you may be aware, NCRCS, New Comprehensive Rural Credit Scheme. Under that one, banks were granting loans to small farmers, small paddy farmers, paddy cultivation, potato, agriculture, various vegetable cultivation. The government provided refinance after they lent to this sector. But later, instead of refinance, the government provided interest subsidy for this thing. And even now, for the SME development, industrial credit for the SME development, the refinance program is there. With some foreign bank assistance, when the government is developing the SME centers, they provide credit through various commercial banks. And these commercial banks lend to these SMEs. After that, they apply and obtain refinance funds from the government. That is from the central bank. And the interest subsidy, the banks are obtaining from the treasury. And the refinance fund, the banks, after lend to this sector, they obtain this refinance from the central bank. Then debenture. So now we are looking at borrowed funds, the sources and uses of bank funds. We are now looking at major sources of the bank funds. Under that one, borrowed funds, credit lines, they obtain from various banks, various foreign banks or foreign institutions, they obtain credit line. And then refinance funds from the government. And then debenture. Debenture means borrowing from the public by these companies and institutions without providing any collateral. Obviously, when a normal person want to borrow from any lending institution, he or she has to provide the collateral. But in the debenture issues, big banks and other banks and big companies, institutions borrow from the general public through debenture issue without providing any collateral. They provide a piece of paper promising, we will pay you this amount at this interest rate at this date. and they borrow from the general. So before that, these banks or whoever want to go for the debenture issue, they do a credit rating of themselves by local or international credit rating agencies. They rate their credit and show the public we are strong. Based on those credit rating, we are strong. We are good financial position, and then go for debenture issues. And sometimes they expect 300 million, 400 million. Sometimes it is oversubscribed also. So people have faith on those companies and they give. So through the debenture issue, they collect funds, borrow funds from the general public. Then euro or dollar borrowing. So these our local banks can borrow from the foreign banks, either euro or dollar borrowing, they can borrow. Apart from this, they retain their profits. Their retained profit also they will be using, plowing it back. Really, they earn the profits, that profits will be plowed it back for lending and other purposes. So major sources, once again, they must have their own capital, then deposits, they mobilize deposits, then borrowed funds, they borrow funds through credit lines, refinance funds, through debenture issues, and euro dollar borrowings. And finally, they have their retained profits. They use these funds for their banking activities. Then users, major users. How the banks are using these funds. One important use, statutory reserve, SRR. Statutory means mandatory, necessary, legally, reserve. All banks, they have to keep a certain percentage of their rupee deposit. They have to keep certain percentage of their rupee deposit with the central bank. For that, the central bank will not pay any interest. So the interest-free rupee deposit, they have to keep it with the central bank. The percentage, the central bank will monitor and change the percentage. What percentage should be kept with the central bank, announced by the central bank. Earlier, there was 6% of the rupee deposit. Sometimes it is increased to 7, 8. It has gone up to 12, and then reducing. So through this SRR, statutory reserve, central bank can manipulate the lending. They can either expand the lending credit, or they can narrowing. They can reduce the lending activities. Yes. Similarly, they can change the interest rates also by changing this SRR. Now, recently you would have seen the government has reduced the SRR to 2%. To 2%. So, if the SRR is reduced, the banks will keep that amount of rupee deposit with the central bank. Now it is 2%, 2%. So the bank can lend more. And the interest rate also can be reduced. By reducing the SRR, the central bank will manipulate the banks to grant more facilities and reduce the interest rate. On the other hand, if the SRR is increased by the central bank, then there will be a credit squeeze. The lending will be reduced, and the interest rate also will be increased. So recently, the central bank has reduced to 2%. This is one mandatory reserve the banks have to keep with the central bank. There is another one, liquid asset reserve. Liquid asset reserve. That is a certain percentage of the rupee deposit should be kept as cash and treasury bill, and there are other items also, but major, the cash and the treasury bill should be kept by the bank with them. That is liquid asset reserve. It is generally 25% or more of the rupee deposit should be kept by the bank as cash and treasury bills. What is this? What is this? For what purpose this liquid asset reserve? This is, you all know, the banks are mobilizing deposit from the customers. When the customer comes and asks for his deposit, the bank, the financial institution, should be in a position to pay it immediately or at short notice. So for that purpose, the banks and the lending institution, credit institution are advised to keep liquid asset reserve with them. Liquid asset. This is to pay the depositors money when they demand. Then credit facilities, providing the credit facilities to the customers. For that purpose, that is the other uses of the bank. Apart from that, securities investment. Besides providing credit facilities to the bank, besides providing credit facilities to the customers, the banks are investing their money, their funds, in securities like shares, buying shares in other institutions, other companies, or their own subsidiaries, floating their subsidiaries for various purposes. So we call it investment banking. This is also another important sector in the banking. If anybody is interested, they can specialize in investment banking. So bank is investing in securities, their money. And apart from that, purchasing fixed assets. They buy land, building, they construct building, and they buy computer hardware and softwares, vehicle, etc., etc. Fixed assets. These are the other uses of bank funds. So now we have seen sources and uses of the bank funds. Once again, uses of bank funds, major uses, statutory reserve, and then liquid asset reserve, that is cash and treasury bills, and there are some other items also, that is to maintain their liquidity. We call it liquidity. In the bank, when we mean liquidity, mean when the depositor comes and asks for the deposit, the bank should be in a position to pay that deposit immediately or at short notice. You may be aware, the recent past, there are so many financial institutions collapsed because they lost their liquidity. Liquidity is an important thing for any business institution. Liquidity. So in the case of banks, when the depositors come and ask, the bank or the financial institution should be in a position to pay their deposits immediately or at short notice. Then the securities investment, banks are investing their monies in shares and other investments. And then fixed assets, purchasing the fixed assets. Well, there is another important thing we have to look at. Overview of asset and liability management in banks. Asset and liability. These are financial terms. You can look at these things in a balance sheet. The balance sheet of an institution. you can see asset and liability. So when we say overview of asset and liability management in a bank mean asset and liability management in a bank means active management of bank balance sheet. Bank has the balance sheet, so managing the bank balance sheet actively. That is the asset and liability management in a bank. Practice of managing the risk that arise due to mismatches between the assets and liabilities. So banks balance sheet, you can see there are assets and there are liabilities. These assets and liabilities should match each other. So what are the assets of a bank? Assets of a bank, the major assets, bank credit facilities and investment are the major assets. There are the assets also, land, building, software, hardware, those assets. But the major assets, bank credit facilities and their investments in shares or other investment. These are the major assets. Then, so what are the bank's liabilities? Yes, deposits, depositors' money, deposits that has to be paid, and bank borrowings, bank would have borrowed. So these are the liabilities of the bank. So one side asset, that is bank credit facilities and bank investment. Other side liabilities, bank deposits, depositors' money, and the bank borrowings. So this should match with each other. That should be managed. So that is asset and liability management in a bank. So these assets, bank assets, I have told you that is credit facilities and the investment, bank liabilities, that is deposits and bank borrowings, should match with each other. Then whether there will be any mismatch between these assets and liabilities, whether there will be any mismatch. Yes, mismatches can arise between these assets and liabilities. So the asset and liability management should look for these mismatches and to prevent suitable action to prevent them, suitable decision to prevent. So what are the mismatches? These mismatches we call risk. These mismatches we call risk. Because of this risk, because of these mismatches, the bank can face risk. So first, interest rate risk. Interest rates mismatch. The bank has to pay depositors interest, pay them the interest to the depositors, and charge interest on the lending. So this should match. The lending interest rate should be more than the depositor's interest rate, paying for the deposit. But the bank charging on lending, that interest rate should be more than what the bank is paying for the depositors. Then only there won't be risk. If it is other way, there will be risk. This is important because you may know earlier the interest rates were fixed. Once you charge an interest rate on a loan, that continues. Similarly, once you pay interest rate to the depositor, that continues as. But now it is not that. Now we have floating interest rate, variable interest rate, based on the customer's request. When you are granting the facility, you may know this is the interest rate, but the interest rate may vary. Floating. If the customer wants a floating interest rate or variable interest rate, yes, you will provide. That can be once in 2 months floating, or once in 6 months floating, once in 1 year floating, based on the customer's wish. So now it is floating interest rate. Both sides. Paying to the depositors also may be floating, charging on the loans also floating. So this should be matched. So the bank has to manage it properly and very carefully to see always what they charge on loan. The interest should be more than what they pay to the depositors. Otherwise, there will be interest rate mismatch, and then this will lead to interest risk. To prevent that one, then the credit risk. The credit risk is probability of default. Customer borrow and may default. Then there will be credit risk. So when it is default, that funds you won't get it, bank won't get it. It's a loss. So that should be prevented. That is credit risk. And then liquidity risk. This means maturity risk. Liquidity risk. What is this risk? Liquidity risk. Now you all know the banks are granting housing loans. Housing loans are generally long-term loans. A borrower can obtain housing loan up to his 55 years of age or even 60 years. And in some cases, it is going up to, under government programs, going up to 70 years also. Very long term. So, on the other hand, you are using depositors' money for these lending purposes. But the depositors keep saving deposit. Maybe demand deposit that will be they will take at any time. Saving deposits also they may take at any time. And the term deposit, fixed deposit, maybe 1 year or 2 years. In some cases, it goes up to 5 years. But at any time, they can come and they take. So how are you going to lend with these deposits? For this long-term lending, that is housing loan. Maybe it may go for 20, 25 years period. How can you lend? So if the depositors come and ask for his money, can you tell him, no, we have given you money for this housing loan. He will repay after 25 years period only. We will recover. So you come after that. Can you say, no, you have to pay. So you have to match this housing loan. When you are granting the housing loan, you are aware that it will be repaid over a period of 20, 25 years. How are you going to finance? You can't do it with the saving deposits or the demand deposits or the fixed deposit. No. So you have to. Yes. So there are certain deposits. Children's savings that may go for about up to the age of 16 years of age. Once they deposit that money, when the child comes after 16 years, he can get that money. So you can use that money. Apart from that, bank owned funds can be used. Retained profits can be used. So you have to match when you are granting long-term loans like housing loan, which money you are going to use for that purpose. So that also you have to manage. Otherwise, if you don't manage it properly, there is a problem. That has happened to Indonesian banks under Asian flu, Asian financial flu. You may be aware about 10, 15 years back, Indonesian banks borrowed from foreign banks. Big amount. Short-term borrowing. And they lent for long-term building construction. They couldn't get the money back. They couldn't pay the foreign borrowings. Big problem. Finally, the World Bank has to go and help. Mismatch. Maturity mismatch. So when you use the funds for long-term or medium-term or short-term purposes, short-term lending, which fund you are going to use it, then you have to manage. So that is liquidity risk. And then foreign exchange risk. Yes, this is another risk. Now banks are buying foreign currencies, dollars, euro, pounds, and then selling, buying and selling by Treasury Department. There are banks under that one. Dealers are there, bank dealers. They borrow, they buy foreign currencies and sell. So when they buy, and they should be able to sell at a higher price. Otherwise, it is another risk. So all these risks should be monitored. So these mismatches will lead to risk. It should be monitored by the asset and liability management. Once again, there can be interest rate risk, there can be credit risk, there can be liquidity risk, and finally foreign exchange risk. All these risks should be managed. So the banks have appointed, they have committees to manage these mismatches and the risk. We call it asset and liability management committees. Asset and management lab. All banks, all financial institutions, they have these asset and liability management committees. They are the hierarchy, higher people, DGMs, AGMs, and sometimes the CEO also will be there in these committees. They manage, they meet regularly, maybe periodically, say about once in 2 weeks, or sometimes maybe if necessity arises once a week, they meet and take the decision. What is the lending interest rate? What are the interest rates for the various type of deposits? All those decisions taken by this asset and liability management committee, and then advice to various branches and the business sectors. Okay, right. Then there is another important thing we should know. Relationship banking. This is an important thing for an effective and efficient bank operation. Relationship banking. Now, the banks are doing financial intermediation. You all know they mobilize funds from the people who have excess money, that is the depositors, and lend to the people who need money, that is the borrowers. We call it financial intermediation. Mulya Matagatvima. Mobilize funds from the depositors and lending. And all are doing this. All banks are doing, even the financial institution, finance companies also doing this one. The same thing. Mobilizing funds from the depositors and lend to the borrowers. So those days, the banking was called as transaction banking. What is this transaction banking? Performing simple transaction with the customer. Once again, I have told you these financial intermediation, all banks and finance companies are doing, all are doing financial intermediation. And under transaction banking, yes, performing simple transaction with the customer. When the customer comes to deposit the money, okay, he comes, deposit to his account, he goes. When the customer comes to open an account, maybe savings or current account, he comes, open and goes. This is performing a so the transaction banking, the bank officer and the customer only in the transaction banking. So under this financial intermediation, all banks, all finance companies are doing the same thing. So when you do the same thing, competition is very high. Yes, it. Bank also A also doing, bank B also doing same thing. So the competition is very high. Then one German bank, they wanted to do something different. to avoid this competition and to have the competitive edge, the German bank introduced a relationship banking. They introduced relationship banking. What is relationship banking? Banks invest building in long-term relationship with its customer. Bank invest building in long-term relationship with its customer. So when the customer comes to open an account, then the bank officer called him, come, sir, sit with you. Yes, you are opening this account for you. How about your family? You are married. Why can't you open an account for your wife? Your children, you have children. So why can't you open children's savings account? There are so many benefits like that. Establishing a relationship with the customer and promoting the business. We call it cross-selling. Cross-selling. When the customer comes for a particular purpose, just finishing and sending him is the transaction banking. But when the bank customer receiving him, making him to sit with him, talking to him, find out his family, and promoting the business, various other facilities available with the bank to that customer, that is building up relationship with the customer, relationship banking, cross-selling the product, various products to that particular customer. Relationship banking, offering customers a broad spectrum of financial products and services that go beyond simple account or transaction to strengthen their relationship with the customers. Cross-selling. Customer is coming only for only a particular purpose. Okay, let him do that purpose, let him finish it, and then you do cross-selling your services and products and find out this customer. What thing you can promote, that is the relationship banking. So when you do this cross-selling, you can introduce demographic-based products. Seniors, sometimes pensioners may come, your customer, to do a particular, to obtain particular service. So you can introduce your seniors account. Students may come. So students, what are the facilities available with you? You can promote the cross-selling. There is demographic-based products you can introduce to the customers. So when you talk to the customer, find out his family and promote your products and everything, it creates customer satisfaction and loyalty. Thereby, customer satisfaction, you are creating the customer satisfaction. And then he will be loyal to your bank. Well, once one bank is doing, other banks also will follow it up. But the bank doing it effectively and efficiently will have a more competitive edge, will be more competitive. The bank which will do this cross-selling and relationship banking more effectively and efficiently will have a competitive edge. It will be more competitive than the other bank. So there are other benefits. You have economies of scales, economies of scope in collection of customers' information. Now, customer is coming for a credit facility. Okay, you are collecting the information, various information you are collecting. That will be with you. His family, where is he working, what is his wife doing, all the family information you collect, and that is with you. He pay this facility and then again come for the next facility. You don't need to start from A again, because already you have the information with you. Only you have to collect additional information. Economies of scale. So that will cut down your cost of collecting information. At the same time, it will cut down the customer's time and cost. The customer will be benefited. You also will be benefited. So economies of scale economies of scope in collection of customers' information, repeated transaction, reducing transaction cost to both. So when you do your relationship banking effectively and efficiently, it will cut down the transaction cost to both, that is to your bank as well as the customer. What is this transaction cost? The cost related to the transaction, maybe a borrowing. So what are the costs to the customer? The borrowers, when the borrower is, when he borrows, the transaction cost on borrowing, yes. Not the interest cost. Interest cost is different. Interest cost for the loan amount, he has to pay the interest. Apart from when he borrow, for the borrowing, he has to spend money. There are costs, maybe inspection charges, legal charges, mortgage bond charges, and then valuation charges. Depending on the type of facility, the customer has to spend money, depending. So these are transaction costs. Apart from that, there is another important cost, time. Time. If the facility, evaluation and granting the facility takes about 2 or 3 months, so many times the customer has to come to the bank. His transport costs, his time, when he comes, he has to leave somebody at his business place. All these costs he has to. So when you do your relationship banking effectively and efficiently, this transaction cost to the customer will be reduced. Obviously, inspection charges, valuation charges, legal charges, these charges he has to pay whenever he takes the facility, depending on the type of facility. But apart from that, the time is another important thing, cost to the customer. And his traveling cost. By reducing the number of trips he has to come to the bank, his transaction cost will be reduced. So by effective and efficient relationship banking, the customer transaction cost to the customer will be reduced. Similarly, whenever customer comes, you also have to spend time with him. The bank is paying you. It is cost to the bank. So the bank cost also, transaction cost also will be reduced. Transaction cost will be reduced to both. So enhance bank competitiveness and profitability. That's what I told. So when you do this relationship banking effectively and efficiently, it will enhance the bank competitiveness and it will increase bank profit. Okay. These basic things we have discussed. Now we are going to move on to types of borrowers and business sectors. Type of borrowers and business sectors. Type of borrowers. So various types of borrowers will come to you for the borrowing purposes. Individuals may come, joint borrowers may come. Maybe Mr. Sudubanda, or maybe Mr. Fernando, or Mr. Muhammad Ali, or Mr. Sundaram may come. Individuals, joint borrowers. 2 brothers may come, 2 sisters may come, mother and daughter may come, father and son may come jointly. So they may come. So these are for consumer credit facilities, individuals and joint borrowers. Consumer credit, paribhoganaya. Maybe to purchase a car, a motorcycle, or maybe housing loan. Consumer credit facility. Individuals and joint borrowers. Then another category, sole proprietorships. These are the business customers. Now this is business customer. Sole proprietorships. Sole proprietorships, a person doing the business in his name. A person doing his business in his name. So there is a Business Name Act number 58 of 1988. Business Name Act passed by the Parliament. Act number 58 of 1988. Under that one, this sole proprietorship should have been registered. So it is legally valid. It should be with the provincial registrar of company. Each province there is a provincial registrar of company. You can find mostly in the district secretariat or some other places. Each provinces. So this business sole proprietorship should have been registered there. So registration certificate should be there. And apart from that, this is registration certificate with the local council, maybe municipal council or town council or Pradeshiya Sabha. They must obtain annual license, business license they should have obtained. So these two documents are necessary. With the provincial register, the companies, the business sole proprietorship should have been registered. Apart from that, the local council, the business should have registered license, obtained the license. So they may come sole proprietorships for borrowing purpose. Then the partnership. So partnership, two or more people carrying out the business. Two or more people. They may be relations or friends or maybe, yeah, but anyway, two or more people carrying the business. So they also should have been registered. Partnership business should have been registered with a provincial registrar of companies as a partnership business. Should be registered. Similarly, they also should have obtained business license from the local council. Should have obtained business license from the local council. These partnerships are governed. They are an earlier state council law, partnership ordinance. Under English law, partnership ordinance. That is governed by this ordinance. Partnerships. Then private limited liability companies may come. So private limited liability companies, that is under Companies Act number 7 of 2007. So they also should have been registered, or we call it incorporated, and registered with the registrar of companies. With the registrar of companies. This registrar of companies in Sri Lanka is the McCallum Road. McCallum Road, yes. So they should have registered and obtained the business registration. In addition, they also should have obtained license for their business from the local council. Private limited liability companies. So who are the owners of the companies? The owners are shareholders, are the owners. And who are the directors of the company? The directors are nominated by the shareholders to operate the business. So directors are not the owners of the company. Shareholders are the owners of the company. And the shareholders have elected directors to manage the company, business of the company. Right. So in a private company, private limited liability company, maximum number of shareholders can be 50. Maximum number of shareholders can be 50. If anything more than 50, then it should be a public company. So public limited liability companies. So these public limited liability companies also same way registered with the registrar of company, and they should have their own business license from the local council. And there are two types of public limited liability companies. One is quoted and other one is unquoted. There is another name for these quoted and unquoted, listed and unlisted. Quoted means They have registered with the Colombo Stock Exchange, and their shares can be buy and sold in public through Colombo Stock Exchange. And the unquoted or unlisted public companies, their shares cannot be sold publicly. Their shares can be sold among themselves, within the present shareholders. Among themselves only, they can sell their shares. But in the case of quoted or listed companies, it is listed or quoted with the Colombo Stock Exchange. Then publicly, those shares can be traded. Publicly, your shares can be traded. Well, then another type of customers, borrowers, statutory bodies or government institution. Statutory body means the institutions created by a statute. Statute is Bank Parliament Act. Statute means Parliament Act. An institution created through a Parliament Act is called as statutory bodies. So the statutory bodies can come to you, the bank, for financing. Government institution can come. Even the government can come to the banks for borrowing. Statutory bodies, example, Institute of Bankers, Institute of Bankers, IBSL is a statutory body. It is created through a bank, through a Parliament Act. Through a Parliament Act. Then government institution, maybe government departments can come. Even the government. On behalf of the government, the treasury is borrowing. Maybe local borrowing or international borrowing, the treasury is borrowing on behalf of the government. Apart from that, societies. There are various societies. Then cooperative societies. Then clubs, non-government organization. They also can borrow based on their legal and other financial status. They can borrow. So they can come to you for borrowing purposes. So these are the type of borrowers. Once again, individuals or joint borrowers, sole proprietorship, partnership, private limited liability companies, public limited liability companies. Then they are of course quoted or unquoted. Then statutory bodies, government institutions, government, societies, cooperative societies, clubs, and NGOs. Now we move on to an overview of lending. The lending, the type of lending we can categorize into four major areas. We can categorize into four major areas. One is consumer credit. Paribhuga consumer credit. So there are the personal loans. Personal loan. All banks are granting personal loans based on the customer's salary income level. Based on that one, they are giving personal loan to purchase. This personal loan, right? Then the house mortgage loan. That is also consumer credit. House mortgage loan, housing loan under mortgage, housing loan under mortgage. This is also consumer credit. The importance of consumer credit, when you evaluate, it should be based on the present income level. It should be based on the present income level of the customer you evaluate whether to grant or not this consumer credit. In the commercial credit. Commercial credit also, there are two types. One is small and medium commercial loans, and another one is corporate loans or corporate credit. The commercial credit, when you evaluate based on the present financial position and on the projected financial position. You project the financial position, future financial position based on the present financial position. So the commercial credit, when you evaluate, you base it on the present financial position and the projected future financial position. Small and medium commercial loans and the corporate loans. Corporate loans are large scale loans. All banks have their corporate customers. All banks have their own definition to classify the corporate customers based on their asset value, turnover, maybe monthly or annual turnover, maybe on the number of employees. Based on that one, all banks have a criteria or definition for their corporate customers. And they have their corporate branches to cater those corporate customers. And there is another term we call wholesale banking. For the corporate customers, the banks are using the term wholesale banking. And all others, they call it retail banking. Now, these personal loans, mortgage, house mortgage loans, and small and medium commercial loan, these are called retail banking. Retail banking. And the corporate loans, they call wholesale banking. These are some bank terms used by the bankers. Then the development credit, Sangvartana Nayam. So under that one, there are two categories, microfinance and the project loans. Microfinance, Sukshma Nayam, group loans. This is in the developing areas to eradicate poverty, introduced by various institutions, international and local institutions like Central Bank, they have introduced the microfinance to eradicate poverty. So that is microfinance, comes under Sangvartananaya development credit. And another one, project loans under development credit. These project loans are mainly for project loans are mainly for SMEs. What? All right, okay. Well, project loans are SMEs. Now, SME, what do you mean by SME? Small and medium enterprises. These SMEs, what is the difference between small and medium commercial loans, commercial businesses, and small and medium enterprises? Small and medium commercial enterprises are already in business for a longer period, maybe 10, 15 years. They are small and medium businesses are already there in business for the last 10, 15 years. But SMEs are young and new enterprises. They have a short financial history, short business history. They have a short business history, maybe 2, 3, or maximum about 4 or 5 years. Those are SMEs. So they don't have a financial history maybe. They don't have financial statement, proper financial statement. Now the financial institutions have to help them, guide them by way of project loans, that is SMEs. And then finally, international trade finance. This is for imports and exports. Imports and exports. So these are the 4 major categories: consumer credit, commercial credit, development credit, and finally international trade credit. Actually, for this import and export also, that is a way of commercial credit. but the type of credit facilities may differ. Type of credit facilities may differ, but international trade credit also really commercial credit. But since the type of credit differ, we put it as on a separate category. So these are the four major currencies. Now, participants, if you are interested, you can specialize in any of those areas. Maybe in consumer credit, maybe in commercial credit, corporate credit, development credit, microfinance, project loans, international trade finance. These are the different areas under credit. You can develop your skills and knowledge. You can develop. Like in the medical field, there are cardiologists, there are urologists, there are various neurologists, various type of people. Similarly, in the banking sector also, specialization is coming too important. It is becoming more and more important, specializing. So you can be a generalist, you can be a general banker with specialization in a particular area. So these are the areas. Now we look at lending for specific purposes. What are the specific purposes? Purpose of advances. Now we have looked at the type of borrowers. Later we have looked at the overview of banking. What are the different categories, areas of bank credit, overview of credit facility. Now, for what are the purposes we can look? Trade, housing, agriculture, industry, tourism, small and medium enterprises, micro enterprises, consumption. These are the major areas where you can provide the credit facilities. We look at one by one. Trade. So when you say trade, these are coming under this trade. Wholesale and retail businesses. Maybe a wholesale business, sugar wholesaler or flower wholesaler, textile wholesaler. Similarly, retail businessmen, when they come to you for facilities, considered under trade. Similarly, import and export businesses, considered under trade. Distribution, dealership, agency. Maybe there are dealers, maybe there are agencies, Anchor milk powder dealers, or Nespray dealers, Ceylon tobacco agents. When they come to you, when you provide the facility, considered as trade. Then providing services, various types of services. Providing technical services, professional services, hotels, restaurants, communications, even private schools. When they borrow from you, it is considered as providing for trade. Similarly, transport facilities. Maybe public transport, like purchasing a bus to operate certain routes from Colombo Kandy or Colombo Matararu. And then similarly, the commercial transport, transporting goods from Colombo to Batikalo or Colombo to Mannar. When you finance them for this transport, it is considered as trade. In the contracts, there are contractors providing contracts, doing contracts. Maybe building contractors, road contractors, service contractors providing services. Now, Colombo cleaning services provided by Abans or some other company. Services. So when you provided facilities for contractors, that is considered under trade. Then the pledge facilities. Actually, the pledge facility should not come here. It should not come here. We will discuss under securities later. So now please leave these pledge facilities. We will discuss this one under securities. Then the real estate business. purchasing a large extent of land, block it, developing it, and selling. You can see when you go from Colombo to Kandy or Colombo to Kurnagala, you can see roadsides, big estates have been purchased, developed, blocked, and sold. You can see the advertisements, yeah, that type of thing. Or constructing a condominium building, a large, very tall building, maybe 20, 25 stories, for apartment, businesses, construction. So when you provide facilities for these things, that is we call real estate development, that is also called as trade. So when you provide facilities for any of these purposes, that is considered under trade. In the housing facility, housing loan, purchasing a residential property, purchasing a house as it is, or purchasing a land and construction of house. You purchase a land and you construct the house, or construction of a house in your own land. You have your own land, you obtain the facility to construct the house, or renovation, extension to the house. You already have a house, you are renovating or extending it with annexes and everything. So if any of those purposes, if you borrow, it is considered under housing. It is considered under housing. Agriculture. Kursikarm. Paddy cultivation, vegetable cultivation, fruit crops or fruit cultivation, fruit crops, perennial crop. Perennial means many years crop. Many years crop. Perennial crop means many years crop. Like cinnamon, minor export crops, yeah, comes under this perennial crops. Even yes, many export crops comes under this perennial crops. Then the plantation crops. Plantation, when you say plantation, tea, rubber, coconut. So plantation crops. Livestock and poultry, dairy farming, goat farming, yeah, buffalo farming, and the poultry farming. Yeah. Then the fisheries and aquaculture, shrimp or prawn cultivation. If any of those things, if you are borrowing or if you are granting the facility, that is considered as agriculture. That is considered as agriculture. In the industry. So industry can be small, medium, and large scale industry. So manufacturing certain products. Maybe a soap manufacturing or plastic item manufacturing. Furniture manufacturing. Yeah. Then the processing. Already there, then you are processing. Gem processing. Milling. Paddy milling. Like that, milling purposes. Mining, graphite mining, gem mining. So all these things, manufacturing or processing, milling, mining, when you grant facilities, it is considered under industry based on the extent or amount, small, medium, or large scale industry. Then the acquisition of new technology, training of staff. Now a customer is having an industry. There may be some new technology. New technology has come. He wants to import that machinery or the technology. So he wants to send his staff to get trained. He wants the facility from you. If everything is okay, acceptable, it is feasible, and if you are granting the facility, that's also considered under industry. Then product quality improvement. Now product is there. Now quality to be improved. Now, a good example, bottled water. Whenever we buy bottled water, we look at what is the date of expiry, another thing, whether ministry approval is there, and another important thing, Sri Lankan Standard Institution, SLSI, Sri Lankan Standard Institution seal is there. So that is for the quality assurance. Quality assurance given by the standard, Sri Lanka Standard Institution for the water bottles. So whenever I buy, I look for that one. But some bottles it is not there. How can you obtain that one? So they won't give you the approval for you to put their sale. So there are certain, yes. You must have a laboratory, you must have a testing equipment, periodically you must test and show whether the quality is assured. So for that one, quality improvement, for this quality improvement, you need finance to establish a laboratory, to purchase the equipment, to appoint a person to do the test and other thing. So if you grant a facility for that purpose, that is also considered under industry. Then the marketing of products. Some companies producing items here, they want to market internationally. They want to establish an office in Dubai. So they have studied, then they have obtained a building. They want to obtain a building, appoint somebody to do marketing, international marketing. They are approaching you for the facility. You are evaluating it, appraising it. And if you are satisfied, yes, they can borrow and they can repay that facility if you are satisfied. And if you are granting, that also will come under the category industry. So once again, industry, small and medium and large industries based on their size, manufacturing, processing, milling, mining, acquisition of new technology, training of staff, product and quality improvement, marketing of products, all these things come under industry. Then small, medium and micro enterprises, SMEM, small, medium and micro enterprise. Micro enterprises, trade and self-employment, petty trade. Sometimes you can see some petty shop, petty kade. You can see a type of self-employment. They are doing things self-employment, so they also can borrow. And then small and medium enterprises, SMEs. I have told you, new and young ventures. New and young ventures. They don't have a very long business history. They may have a short business history. So that type of customers. So when you finance that type of businesses, it is called small and medium and micro enterprises. There are so many SME credit lines over a period of time, SME credit lines for this type of businesses. And then tourism. Construction of a hotel. If somebody want to establish hotel, construction of hotel, or maintenance and refurbishing the hotel. Tour and travel agents, operating tours and travels, and providing tourist transport, purchasing some big Volvo buses or modern these Chinese bus to transport tourists. So if you grant facilities for any of these things, that is considered under tourism. And finally, consumption, consumption, vehicle for personal use, and then household goods, purchasing household goods like washing machine, TV, like that, household goods. Purchasing vehicles for personal use, motorcycle, cars, like that. In educational purposes, maybe a customer want to send his daughter or the son for the higher education to UK or maybe for China, somewhere to do the medical degree, and they are applying for a credit facility. You are evaluating their request, And if you are satisfied that they will repay that facility, then that also considered as consumption facility. And as usual, any other things not coming under those categories what we have discussed, also you can put under consumption. Example, a customer want to get married, give away his daughter on marriage. So he need money for the maybe to give dowry or for the wedding expenses. So he is approaching you for a facility. You are examining, okay, he has the facility to repay the facility, and you are satisfied. If you are satisfied, and if you are granting the facility, then that also can be considered as consumption. Okay, right. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. This is today's session, and if you have any doubt, of course, you can contact me. This is, and we may meet you in the next session. Our Institute of Bankers will inform you when the next session will be. Okay. Thank you very much.